The stakes are as high as the wait is long in Congo. Voting rolled over for an unscheduled second day in a sprawling, often unruly Central African nation that's picking a president, national, regional, and municipal lawmakers. The logistics are challenging. The politics are rough. This in a resources-rich nation that's dogged by poverty, corruption, and decades of insurgencies in the east. 5 years ago, the DR Congo voted out an incumbent president peacefully through the ballot box. The process, though, was far from perfect, with evidence of wide-scale irregularities. Will this time be different? We'll ask our panel about the players and about that delay, and also about the arbiters, who include both poll monitors and the clergy, a national electoral commission. This in a nation where the state itself is weak. Will measure what's changed in 5 years, whether citizens have benefited at all from a precious minerals boom, and what's next for what's now the world's biggest francophone nation. Today in the France 24 debate, we're looking at Congo's high-stakes election, and joining us from Goma in eastern Congo is Fred Boma, Executive Director of the Ebuteli Research Center on Politics, Governance and Violence. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
From Brussels, sociologist Justine Kasavubu is Congo's former ambassador to Belgium. Welcome back to the show.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Good evening.
Thierry Vircoulon is associate researcher at the think tank IFRI's Africa Center. Good to see you.
Thank you. Thanks.
France 24 senior producer Henri-Pierre Mafoulou is with us as well. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Your reactions on the hashtag F24debate. Before we go to our panel, let's first go to Kinshasa and get an update from France 24's Andrew Hellier. Andrew, day two of a one-day election. Are the polls closed?
Well, that's what we're waiting to find out. There's still a lot of confusion today on this, the second day voting in these elections. Of course, what the Electoral Commission had said was that those polling stations that weren't able to open yesterday for whatever reason would open today between the hours of 6 a.m. and 5 p.m. That's what they said. Now we're waiting to hear from the Electoral Commission. We're waiting to hear official figures on the vote. We still haven't heard those figures yet. We will obviously, of course, bring them to you as soon as we get them. We have heard in the last few hours from the Joint Observer Mission of the Catholic and Protestant Church. Now, they put out a statement citing issues with electronic voting equipment. Now, you just have to take what they say with a little bit of caution. That's because they don't have observers in every polling station across the country. They're not an official source. The only official source, and we keep saying this, is the Electoral Commission. But what we can say is that yesterday, I think what struck our team the most at the polling station we visited here in La Gombe, in the heart of Kinshasa, were the queues of people, hundreds and hundreds of people queuing, jostling, trying to get inside the polling station to cast their ballots. Many had been waiting for hours and still wondering when it would be their turn to vote. And of course, the logistical challenges involved in organizing these elections on such a huge scale are simply enormous. Democratic Republic of Congo is Africa's second biggest country. There are 75,000 polling stations scattered right across the country. Some of those very difficult to reach. Indeed, some of those even unreachable by road. In the run-up to these elections, some people even thought that the Electoral Commission would postpone the vote by perhaps a week or more. In the end, they didn't, perhaps because they thought that risked inciting people to violence. So they've tried sticking to the official calendar, but because the vote has now gone on for longer than 24 hours, some people in the opposition already questioning the legitimacy of these elections.
Andrew Hillier, thanks for that live update. Earlier, Andrew was telling us, Henri-Pierre Mafoulou, that it's a bit of a damned if you do, damned if you don't. 30% of voters had not yet cast a ballot when the day began. Second day of voting is a good thing in that regard, but the longer it goes on, the more you've got challenges that are possibly coming in down the line.
Well, Francois, you said it, Congolese or Democratic Republic of Congo do things the way nobody else does. We kind of have specialized in the kind of stuff. It's a good thing because there's electoral law needs to be pursued. That means that, you have about 44 million eligible voters, and they should have the right to express their say. That's one thing. But
it's an unscheduled second day. Is it a surprise, though, for you?
Everything that comes out from DR Congo when it comes to elections is always historic. If you take the difference, last election cycle in 2018, it was a postponement by a week. But there you have it. I think now it's up to observers to point out towards the Electoral Commission, the Independent Electoral Commission, say, people have been talking about these logistical issues for weeks, if not months. And, they stand their ground and they decided that it's going to happen. But there we are.
All right, we're pleased to welcome at this point from the capital, Kinshasa, another panelist, Annie Modi, Executive Director of the Women's Health Support and Advocacy Group, Afia Mama. Thank you for being with us here in the France 24 debate. Let me ask you from the get-go, did you vote? And if so, how did it go?
Thank you very much for inviting me on this panel on this critical day for the Democratic Republic of Congo, my country. Yes, I did vote yesterday, and it was challenging to exercise my right. First, because it was from all evidence that the Electoral Commission was not ready to organize this election as for on the 20th of December 2023. So the image I'm seeing is exactly where I voted yesterday, and to access the premises was a challenge. Secondly, authorities and potential parliamentarians, those who are candidates, created a lot of disorder again because they came with a crowd to access. A lot of witnesses were kept outside of electoral premises where we were supposed to go and vote. So it was challenging. I spent almost 6 hours from the time I reached my voting center to the time that I was able to...
Wow, 6 hours. How does that compare with 2018?
No, I think the challenge was this cycle is even more prepared than the 2018 electoral process where I voted and observed as well. So and this challenge was foreseen from the beginning, because to start off revision of electoral law took a lot of time, and then putting in place Electoral Commission members was another challenge. And we know that some stakeholders contested the Electoral Commission and staying out of the process. So the time itself was already a challenge to start off. And secondly, also the resources that was going to allow Electoral Commission to prepare better at the short time that was left to them to make sure that we had a free and transparent and well-organized election, because we could only hope that this cycle would be the most well-organized electoral process, since they were supposed to learn from the previous...
From what had happened last time. Fred Boma, before I ask you how voting went for you over in Goma, it's interesting because you heard Henri Pierre mention 44 million registered voters. This is in a nation of an estimated 100 million. That means the population is very young. So is it going to be a challenge every time with all those new people on the voter rolls?
I mean, this is the fourth time we organize elections since the peace agreement in 2023. And what is surprising is that we behave like as if it was the first election. The level of disorganization and the level of challenge that we see could make you feel like this is the first election ever organized in DRC. Yes, we have a lot of young people are the majority of the voters. That has always been the case in the past 3 elections. I think by now the Electoral Commission has a way of reviewing the voter register every time and audit it. So that is probably not, having young people is not the biggest challenge of this process. The biggest challenge is to be able to have elections that are very well organized, and that's create conditions of the highest credibility.
And so what was it like where you are in Goma?
I think my experience is similar to what Annie was describing. I was observing 5 to 7 voting centers, and the first one I went to was very early in the morning, and people was waiting until 10 to 11 a.m. before the first one started voting. In some other centers, they have to wait until 1 p.m. There was a lot of difficulty to find their name on voter register. There was a lot of problem with voting machine, and overall, I think the only positive thing was that there was a huge mobilization of voters who were ready to vote. I suspect some of them may have not been able to vote because of the technical difficulties. So, despite that huge mobilization, I think the participation rate will probably fall under 50%.
Yeah, if a lot of people experience the same thing as Annie Maudit and had to wait 6 hours to cast a ballot, if at all. Justine Kasavubu, let's cut to the chase here. Was it a good idea holding this election on this day, or should the vote have been postponed?
Well, I think that the best decision to be taken was to postpone or even to cancel. Because, I mean, if we all agree to put hypocrisy aside, we must bear in mind that this is the consequence of the deal that was concluded 5 years ago by Felix Tshisekedi Chilombo with Kabila. And this deal, I mean, showed Tshisekedi acting like a gambler, and the game led him to conclude this deal. It was not meant for him to run the country, but it was meant just to keep the preparation of Kabila going on. So, I mean, who can accept today this mess? It was just an electoral nightmare, predictable also. So,
right. So explain that for us. Explain that for us. How are the alliances? How are the alliances of 5 years ago? How do they explain what's happening at the ballot box today?
Well, because you see, with the deal, there is one person who doesn't accept to respect the deal. So they made it possible to have all this mess. And I think that it's not innocent what is happening. This catastrophe was predictable, as I said. And I mean, we mustn't be innocent. I think this is organized, and this was the will of
what, to encourage voter suppression?
And, Kadima. Excuse me?
To encourage voter suppression?
Yeah, to encourage, I mean, the stability of the country, and also to encourage, I mean, the cheating. Because this is all about, it's the cheating. And I think that these are not fair elections. So, I mean, the wise decision to be taken and to be practiced is just to postpone the election. And if we postpone the election, it means without Felix Tshisekedi, because, I mean, all this disorganization was decided intimately by him and the inner circle that has been accompanying him all these years.
Thierry Vircoulon, there is a National Electoral Commission. So what can you say about the suspicion there that's voiced by Justine Kasavubu?
Well, I don't know if we can say that the Electoral Commission did it on purpose, but what it's clear is that the responsibility of that very badly organized election, actually the worst organized elections since 2006 definitely is for the Electoral Commission. They have obviously, when you hear your reporting and all the feedback that comes from Congo, they did a very bad planning. They were told many times that they didn't have the time enough. They were very slow to ask for support, transport support from the United Nations. They didn't want to do it, then they did it, but too late. At the end of the day, I understand that the MONUSCO helped a bit. The Egyptian army also sent a few planes in emergency, but of course, this couldn't sort it out the problem. So it's all the bad planning of the Electoral Commission that is responsible for the delay that we see now. And
is that bad planning, disorganization, or is it malice?
Well, it's at this stage it's difficult to know, and the observers of the various religious organizations will tell us basically what has been happening now. I think it's too early to say, but definitely the planning was very bad. Everybody knew it. There was even an attempt to postpone the election, and then for I understand political reason, it was decided to hold the election on time. And as I say, since the first election in 2006, this is the most disorganized election. And let's not forget that this is also the most expensive election. It cost more than $500 million to organize that very confused electoral process that we witness now.
Henri-Pierre Mafoudou, what's next then?
What's next? I mean, the best way is first to look into the rear view. I think we should put things into context. Whether your political alliance or people need to think that there was the first peaceful transfer of power that happens
in 2018.
In 2018, in the history of Congo for 50 plus years. It's now been independent from Belgium for 63 years. So there were a lot of hopes, a lot of promises. The person who took over as opposition political figure. So people have huge expectation. You add to that the fact that the youth represent the majority of the people. And as Fred Boma was mentioning, there was also a huge turnout. People stay there. The people literally camp. To go back to your previous question, it's historic. Usually when elections experience postponements or delays, it's either due to weather conditions or force majeure, quote unquote. This has never happened. The call at some point was basically whatever time, because I've been talking with a lot of my sources on the ground, they say that whatever time they open, if the polling stations will remain open for 16 hours in very dire conditions.
Yeah, because it is rainy season.
It's rainy seasons in Congo right now. How do you expect that from people? And look at the infrastructure, the electricity, the means to accommodate all those people just because they want to have their say in the elections. This was forthcoming. It was widely expected. They've been warned, and they just decided to keep on going, saying that they were up for the challenge. But we must say it's definitely a logistical failure, down to bottom, from the Electoral Commission.
Of course,
put it whatever way you want, it's definitely a failure. There's nothing to be said about it.
Of course, once it's the Electoral Commission says that the last ballots have been cast, the process is far from over. What we saw in 2018 was a strong role of civil society. Annie Maudit, let me begin with you on this point. Congo has a weak state. It's got a thriving civil society. We've seen an important role of the church, both Catholic and Protestant, getting involved in observing these elections. What are your hopes when it comes to the actual counting of ballots and when it comes to announcing winners?
First of all, we have to put things right context when it's legality of it. At the legal point of view, whatever votes that are being casted after the 20th December 2023 are called to be void. Speak why? First of all, because it is the law that has stated that election has to happen within 24 hours. And secondly, for whatever logistical reason, the only exception that our electoral law gives is for those voting centers that opened when it was supposed to open. And if there were a logistical challenge, the center has, and observers, they have to start from taking electoral card of those waiting in the queue and serve them until they cast their vote. But this is out of even the exception that the law has allowed. Up to today, some of the electoral kits are still being deployed. Electoral Commission was supposed to request from the Constitutional Court a mandate to extend. They didn't ask for extension, which means that after midnight of the 20th, the process itself is not legal anymore. So how then the result is going to be pronounced out of the legal framework?
What are you saying should happen? How should it work? Should you only count the ballots that were cast on Wednesday, not the ones from Thursday?
Talking, at the legal point of view, the whole election are just void. It's void because we have electoral ballot in the streets. We have kits that has not yet been deployed, and we have people who could not find their names on the list. I witnessed myself hundreds of people with the electoral card but could not vote because their name were not displayed. So the whole process actually has just to be cancelled, and they have to sit down and, our Constitutional Court has to be seized, and this election has to be reorganized within a reasonable time, because we cannot have a winner in a game that did not respect the legal rules, because the Electoral Commission went against the electoral law itself to continue organizing elections on their own decision. The Electoral Commission does not have the mandate to decide to extend the elections process behind the dates that was set.
Let me put it here to Fred Boma. Do you agree with Annie Modi that there should be a rerun because of all the snafus?
I mean, given the way the election has been organized, there is a lot of disorder, right? Between people who couldn't vote, voting pools that couldn't open, and so on. What Annie is talking about, many other people are asking for it. There is 5 presidential candidates who are almost asking for the same thing. Now, do I think that is going to happen? I don't really see how possible that will happen. I think the most likely outcome of this election is contested legitimacy of people who will be ruling the country who will be proclaimed. Whoever may be will be contested, and there will be a lot of ground on which to contest it. I think the Electoral Commission should take responsibility of the chaos that we saw yesterday, and normally someone should ask them to respond in front of the law. As many of the panelists here mentioned, this was predictable for months. Many people were saying how logistically it was very difficult to organize the election the 20th of December. And the Senate keep repeating that they were going to hold those dates. At some point, we had the impression that Senate had some magical thing that many people were not seeing. And so when all the scenes of chaos start popping up on social media and in different part of the country, for people who observed the election process from the beginning, this wasn't surprising. Now the question is, who is going to be held accountable for this chaos? Is it the Senate? Is it the government? Is it what will be the consequences? Are they going to cancel the election? We had chaotic election in 2011. I think this didn't lead to cancellation of election. So probably that is not going to be the outcome. But it's posed a serious question on the legitimacy of the election, and this may also give additional arguments to people who were already prepared to contest, as the former president of Electoral Commission, on other people who are asking for.
Yeah, we've seen several of the main candidates already beginning to contest. Thierry Vircoulon, you heard Henri-Pierre Mafoulou describe 2018, where there were plenty of irregularities. There was even a report published in the Financial Times that shows that perhaps Félix Tshisekedi didn't even win the election, if you count all the ballots. Nonetheless, it was a peaceful transfer of power. It felt like a step forward to many people. What's happening in 2023? What's the difference?
Well, the difference, I would say that it's not about the end of a very long presidency like the one of Kabila, who was in power for a very long time and who actually was at the end of its capacity, and there was a lot of pressure, both internally and externally, for him to step down. So it's not at all the same political situation at the moment. But nevertheless, as you said the speaker before, there is a very problematic legal issue here. The Constitutional Court will have to deal with it, and there's no doubt that the opposition is going to go to the court about the way it's been organized, definitely. And so the Constitutional Court is going to play a key role in the coming days or weeks about the outcome of this election, definitely. And that was not usually that if it has been organized smoothly, that wouldn't have been the case. The Constitutional Court will have just to validate or invalidate the result of the Electoral Commission. But now it's going to have to say if the voting was legal or not. And that's a new thing that never happened in the past.
Let me ask you, Justine Kasavubu, has Congo changed for the better or for the worst over the last 5 years?
Well, I can assure you that we have experienced the worst, not only because we are just now watching all this disorganization, but let me tell you that who can really seriously accept the outcome of such result if ever they release some results? I mean, it's just nonsense. And I think that Congo, we must see it as a very important country, and also a country that will face so big challenges in this 21st century. So I think that we cannot take things like for granted. We have to face this situation and not let Congo go with a president that would be put in place, just swinging between the cheating and justifying the cheating. No. We cannot accept that. Congo is a very important country in Central Africa and also in Africa. So we have to take the courage to cancel these elections and, I mean, to rewind the whole process, because it is possible. We have wasted so much money. And so now, what does it matter if we have to go again?
Is it really possible? Can Congo do? I know Kenya did a rerun of an election after a Supreme Court ruling. But does Congo have the means to do that, and the will to do it all over again?
Listen, where there's a will, there's a way. They took the time to waste money so they can take the time to reorganize everything. I mean, we are maybe 100 millions of people. So we have to take care about our people. We cannot not just go there because we have to give satisfaction to some politicians who organize all this mess. So, I mean, who can accept really to see Congo face such a disorganization? I mean, I don't agree. We have to cancel, and we have to be courageous to see the reality and to confront with this reality.
All right, and you talk about challenges. Well, our teams went to witness some of those challenges that we'll be facing, whoever Congo's next president is. Look no further than Kinshasa's Pakajuma shantytown. Andrew Hillier has the story.
The trains don't stop here in Pakajuma. Public services are non-existent in this sprawling slum of 50,000 people, which borders Kinshasa's richest neighborhood. Eliane Kibubi is a familiar face here. In 2021, she founded the Pakajuma Resilience Foundation. Thanks to Eliane's help, Betty learned to read and write at the age of 42.
If someone has a good heart and sees us, they come and help us. There was a fire not long ago, and Eliane and Laura helped us. They gave me that sheet. An ordinary person with more money would never live like this. If it rains, there are worms everywhere. Excrement washes by right here.
There's no running water and no sewage system to treat human waste. A handful of scattered clinics provide healthcare, but it's nowhere near enough. Very few children have access to education, and for those who do, it's because individuals like Samson Wemambolo pay out of their own pocket to keep schools running.
The classroom, as you can see, is very small. It's not suitable. It's even rained. There are puddles in here. The pupils have to study in very poor conditions because they've been abandoned. They've been completely abandoned.
Close to 400 school children study here on broken desks and under leaking roofs.
I don't get any help from politicians, so I have to support the project myself with the few means that I have.
Eliane and Samson hope that school programs will offer young boys and girls a brighter future, giving them an alternative to petty crime and prostitution.
It's not because they want to, it's because there's poverty. They even struggle to afford sanitary towels that cost less than $1. So they tell themselves that all they can do is get involved in prostitution. Nowadays, many parents, young mothers, already have 2 or 3 children by the age of 15 or 16. They're not fortunate enough to go to school like me or you. So we have to give them a helping hand, insist on the importance of education.
With the state nowhere to be seen, Pakajuma's people have learnt to rely on each other. They've stopped believing promises made by politicians.
Annie Moody, when you look at that report, for you, what is the top priority for whoever rules Congo next?
Whoever rules Congo next, priority should be to reinforce the judicial system, because our basic service, social service delivery reached this point due to impunity. When people misuse public money, they should get not just arrested for sure, but really the public resource need to go to get back. We get a judicial system which has been weakened by the politicians. And one thing is the politicians are the ones who are nominating the magistrates who are sitting in the court, from the low level of the judicial system to our constitutional courts, by the way. So at the end of the day, the judicial system is not serving the country, is not reinforcing the rule of law, is serving interests of few politicians. So whoever will rule Congo next will start by really making it a reality, the separation of the 3 powers. We have to feel like Parliament is doing the work of voting the law, controlling the executive power, and representing the people. And the judicial power is doing its work, because without a legal system which is reinforced, without the rule of law, it is very difficult to get education right, to get the health system right, because we have people who have misused money that was set
and the people we saw in that report who have to fend for themselves, basically.
Exactly. And for having people in the 26 provinces, I have offices, and I work in Pakajuma as well. I'm telling you, there is a separation. It's like living in 2 worlds. Pakajuma is in Kinshasa, Gombe is in Kinshasa, but if already in Kinshasa you can see the situation of Pakajuma, what can you imagine when you are in Tongo or Ruchuru or Lubero or Bunagana? So the far you go out of the big town, the worse the social situation is. So I strongly believe that everything will start by having a strong judicial system. Without with impunity, nothing will improve.
All right, so
With
a call for more
action,
accountability. In the past decade.
Exactly, we need more accountability, not just from the politicians. In fact, even as a civil society, we need to hold in fact, we need to show the example, and we also need to teach the people to hold accountable those who are misusing public funds. By the way, some of the disorder that we
I was just going to say, in the past decade, the rate of extreme poverty, those earning around $2 a day, has declined, but the Democratic Republic of Congo remains one of the poorest countries on Earth, according to those UN surveys, despite being the planet's top producer of cobalt, essential for the batteries that power our telephones and our cars. It's also said to become the world's second copper producer, not to mention gold and much more. Fred Boma, you're from mining country over there in the east of Congo. Again, we've witnessed this. The whole planet is turning towards the riches that you have. Over the past 5 years, how have conditions changed?
Well, first of all, let me say Pakajuma is like 500 meters from Gombe, where people live with a lot of money, where people are dying in next door. Coming back to your question, I'm speaking from Goma, where around here the city is surrounded by displacement camp, where people live in misery. We have today more than 7 million of displaced people, people who doesn't experience any of those wealth that you were describing here. So and people who are living their home because of conflict and violence conflict. So I think we, as Annie was saying again, this is a sort of a country where people live two very opposite realities. The one live with salaries that look like the biggest executive of Western company, and the other one who struggle to have bread. And those are millions of people who are dying for famine and stuff like that. I think the priority of the whoever will be the next president will be to end violence in the East, and will be to create conditions of shared prosperity. We can't continue to be a country where we find it almost normal that some people may drink champagne from the morning to the night, and other people are struggling to have clean water.
And on that point, your reaction to the United Nations on the eve of the vote agreeing with the government's call to withdraw peacekeepers from South Kivu?
I understand. I mean, the MONUSCO has become so unpopular in Eastern DRC. I think there was no other way around other than asking for the drawdown of the mission. The question is how the security situation in the East is going to be affected from that. Who will replace the MONUSCO? Now, the government, instead of being serious on security sector reform, on building an army that is capable of protecting people, we keep relying on foreign intervention. And I don't think that a long-term solution to the crisis in DRC. I think the MONUSCO was supposed to leave after 25 years. There is no way to continue to maintain it the way it is. But I think the security of people and the and the long-term peace should be the priority. And so far, the debate is so politicized around it, and no clear outcome in the future is being foreseen.
Thierry Vircoulon, a war that's gone on, a low-level insurgency at times, other times it's been more than that, in the East for the last quarter century. How do you explain it?
Well, it's the fastest explanation, I would say, because of course there are many causes, is with the fact that there is a violent system of extraction of natural resources that is working well for many stakeholders in the Congo and in the region and even overseas. But I would just like to come back on the election because it's connected with the departure of MONUSCO. The 2006 election was organized by MONUSCO, and it was the best politically and logistically election that happened. And since then, the UN has disengaged progressively of the election, and this election, like the election in 2018, is a 100% Congolese election, funded by Congo and organized by the Electoral Commission alone. And I see what's happening with the withdrawal of the UN, because indeed the UN is not involved anymore in the electoral process, and we see that it's creating some problems. And at the same time, the government says we can do things, we can manage things on our own, and especially what's the conflict in the East. And so we see the contradiction now, because the election was very badly organized, while the government say also we can do it on our own. We don't need the UN assistance to do that.
So we're running short on time. I want to bring in Justine Kasavubu on this. Do you regret the fact that the UN's not one of the, and its MONUSCO operation is not helping to organize the election?
No, I think we haven't mentioned a big factor of all this situation. MONUSCO, if MONUSCO, withdraw, this is also the will of the people of Congo. But we mustn't forget that Congo is facing an occupation. And all this plundering of our natural resources, where does it go? It goes through Rwanda. And as long as Rwanda still has a say on what is happening in our country, and as long as Kabila is still on the spot, acting in cooperation with Kagame, those are the actors behind the scene. We haven't spoken about them, but they are very important in all these situations. So I think that MONUSCO, at the end, we have noticed that MONUSCO didn't really do a good job in terms of protecting people, in terms of also avoiding the attacks against our people, especially in the remote areas. So I think that we have to expect from international community to know its right position, because international community still helps Rwanda, still support Rwanda. So how can we talk about free and fair elections as long as this disorganization is an advantage for them? I am very confident in my country.
Something that Rwanda staunchly denies. Unfortunately, we're out of time. Henri-Pierre Mafoudou, no new updates for now for us?
No communication from the Electoral Commission whatsoever.
We're going to continue to follow it. So much more to talk about. Sorry we had to cut the conversation short, out of time. But Justine Kasavubu, I want to thank you so much for joining us from Brussels. I want to thank Annie Modi from Kinshasa, Fred Boma in Goma, Thierry Vircoulon, Henri-Pierre Mafoudou. Thank you for being with us here in the France 24.